Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Sometimes you see a product that you think might just have a chance in this weird comics ecosystem to make a dent in creator sales numbers. I'm personally convinced this could be one of those. So it is with anticipation that I introduce Kenny Meyers on the Cryptid Creator Corner to chat with me. Kenny is the mastermind behind Sweet Shop, a new digital comic store, Bindings, a simplified comics creator portal designed to make connection and direct sales simpler, and Find Your Comic Store, where you can use an online map to do, well, more or less exactly like it suggests. Kenny, I'm delighted to have you on with me, and I'm looking forward to a positive tech forward discussion, which I usually don't get to do around here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you on. Well, I want to break things down sort of individually, but first, I want to get to this whole conceptual idea in your head. So, coming off the back of what was a challenging situation with Omnibus, I think I know two things immediately about you. First, you deeply care about comics. Second, you're a bit of a masochist, my friend. So why did you do this to yourself?
Um, I mostly was annoyed at the state of things as someone who is, very technical and likes using things that work really well and work really beautifully. Um, I was very, I just saw a lot of things that seemed like they could be easily ported over from technology. Easily
Yeah.
is, of course, the word in big quotes there, but, uh, and I started talking to creators and I don't know, I loved comics and I love comics, and doing Omnibus, which was a digital store, made me love comics even more, even though it was a challenge. So it I mean, it's really just about like I don't really know how to answer that, to be honest with you. I just really like doing a lot of things. I really like staying busy, and, Sweet isn't just me, it's also 2 other people, Matt
Yeah.
and Ben, and of course, they helped significantly both be like, "Kenny, you need to not do that, like, you need to stop," and also like, "Oh, yeah, we could do that." Like, they're also really grounded, much more grounded than I am, which is very helpful. So I don't know. It's they I don't think they're as big a chunk of time as people might think they are, just because the 3 of us are all very, very experienced, so we know how to move pretty quickly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very, very elegantly designed. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff. I've been watching because I'm actually building a website, working on rebuilding Comic Book Getty's website, working on building a website for my wife. And I've done this for hospitality before. It's not something I'd like to do. I'm probably the most reluctant tech guy you'll ever meet. I'm fairly adept at it, but I don't like it. But I've been watching a whole lot of stuff about website design lately and how to do layouts. And that is the thing that this really just jumps out to me immediately is how elegantly and simplified all this stuff is, especially from a creator perspective. So thank you for being such a comics nerd and putting an elegant spin on what has been up to this point a relatively clunky interface that as fans and creators, everybody's sort of had to deal with.
Uh, well, I think it's really important to note that I am really just lucky to collaborate with people like Tom Carmody, who was the designer who kinda helped us set the stage for how a lot of our aesthetic is right now, and Ben, he's a software engineer, but he's also an incredibly talented designer in his own right. Um, so I am attracted to people who really love good design, and who really are focused on good design. I mean, Omnibus itself, Travis is a good designer, and it was really just I think it's really important in a place full of schlock. There's just a lot of schlock. It's just
Yes.
like if it I feel like good design's the bare minimum for such an incredibly visual medium. Like, it's very tough to achieve, obviously, and then user interfaces are their own complexity, but, um, when you're displaying some of the most beautiful pieces of art, you wanna make sure that it's I mean, I guess making those isn't easy. That part should be the hard part of the process. The easy part should be showing it, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
well, coming from that space, it feels like we should have gotten the digital marketplace right at this point in time in 2025. What did you learn from your omnibus experience that you feel like will translate into a better user experience with Sweet Shop? And every time I say that name, I have Sean William Scott in my head from Dude, Where's My Car? So thank you, question mark.
Yeah, there's a lot of sweet puns pretty much everywhere, and we have a Slack and with everyone. It's wonderful and by design. Um, the question again was, sorry, you lost me on the pun. What was the question again?
No, you're good, you're good. You should check and see if Sean's got a cameo and, like, get him to do a pitch for your marketing campaign. But the question was, what did you learn from your time at Omnibus Experience that will translate to a better user experience with Sweet Shop?
Um, a lot of a lot of the learnings from Omnibus were actually more business related. They
Okay.
were more like what it actually takes to do a digital comics store, and then engineering related, like what the metadata problem is, which is actually a really big. I mean, if you follow a lot of retailers and Comics Pro, there's a group of retailers who are trying to actually solve this with like a standardized metadata
Yeah.
problem. But when you actually deal with it from multiple publishers, the metadata, for anyone who doesn't know, is just like all the stuff of like page number, publication date, description, the type it is, graphic novel, like versus a volume versus a single issue, like all of this stuff. And every publisher has their own standard. And you sort of have to build a filter system to like take various opinionated and usually hand keyed data from publishers and display it in a universal way. So that filter is probably the biggest single task in building a digital comic store, next to the people problem, which is getting people on board, getting publishers on board, and everyone has their own different take on it. It's like a lot of really interesting little webs interconnected, that when I was doing Omnibus, I was just like, oh, like this could probably be simpler, or oh, this didn't cost as much money as I thought it would, as an example. But this, like, there's weird things like minimum guarantees from publishers where like you have to
Okay.
make this X amount of dollars. So the user interface, I thought, was pretty solid on Omnibus. It was always the real learnings were in the behind the scenes stuff, which I then streamlined, hopefully, with round two with Sweet Shop, which we're launching, this probably like September, early September.
Okay. With the metadata, because I come from a professional photography background, so I'm familiar with really embedded.
Oh
Like a
yeah.
lot of people don't know how to embed anything metadata stuff into an image. I think it's huge. I think people are missing a whole lot when they're
Yeah.
putting stuff out there on websites when they don't do it, but most people have no concept of how to do it. So with big umbrella, the onus of bindings and Sweet Shop. Clearly, from Sweet Shop, you've got the publishers, and that's trying to work that piece of it out. But how will that work with metadata? And I know we're getting into the weeds here, and some people probably like, "Well, what is
People
all this
love
stuff?"
sexy metadata conversations. That's like number one on the list on podcasts. It's like murder podcasts, metadata conversations.
Exactly. Now that we've gotten rid of half the audience at this point,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but with respect to bindings, like how will creators navigate that or navigate the metadata as they are uploading their own, let's say, preview for 4 issues or 4 pages of an issue or something? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think the really nice part there is there's not as much required, or like
Okay.
that is interesting visibly. Like creators can upload, that we really just have a title and a description and just some check boxes for, like, I think there's two or three where it's like you can display this. This has an inside front cover, so we want to make sure that it does two up on the second page, kind of thing. Like solving little
Okay.
problems like that are what that's about. But in general, it's a 6-page preview. They don't need like the page count or anything like that. The release date they can add in if they want to, or they can just put their newsletter. Like it's very much a tool for creators. And there's no hard connection between anything we're doing, at least not yet.
Okay. Well, it's kind of circling back to the publisher end of things. How has all of the recent Diamond fiasco accelerated publisher interest in this?
I don't know if it's accelerated publisher interest. I think there is a problem of digital stores, even my own, coming and going, right? Like, so it
Yeah.
becomes like a cycle of frustration, I assume, for a lot of publishers, understandably so. Um, so I think that there were certainly publishers who are looking for like alternative means of distribution and um just so that they can have multiple sources of revenue so that they're not wholly reliant on, one
Sure.
distributor like they've been. Um, so, and then there's, it's so different. Every publisher is its own sort of puzzle that I need to sort of crack
Okay.
and figure out. And it's very much a people problem. And they have their own concerns, or, one publisher doesn't want to do DRM free, and one publisher's like, I won't do it without DRM free. Like it's very, very fascinating. Um, dynamics, but the one thing that is very true is like the diamond thing probably encouraged some publishers and probably maybe pushed some things back because they're like, we need to deal with this first. So it was like mixed, is how I would say it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
how did that one of the things that I really like about this, and I notice is there's a retailer affiliate kind of system that's embedded, which I absolutely love because we've created that polarity between the direct market and the digital comics market, which has never made much sense to me. As the goal is really ultimately to just get more people hooked, and you get that by putting more books in readers' hands. Rising tide lifts all ships and all that. But how are you envisioning integrating that retailer affiliate element of it? Because I'm really intrigued by this idea.
So I think we won't probably launch with the retailer affiliate program. And the reason is I want, like with Find Your Comic Store, I'm a new face to retailers. I'm a new face to a lot of people, but they've been doing it for a long, long time, most of these retailers. And I come in pretty, I mean, it's an idea, almost an idea I threw out there, but the scope of it, I'm talking to retailers and trying to see what they're comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with, and trying to approach it from the fact that, you know, some retailers are cautious about digital comics stealing their business.
Sure.
I don't think that's the case. I don't think that will happen. Um, and some retailers are like, it's like the publisher problem. It's like there's just like it's like a different personality. Comics is full of personalities. It's amazing. Like you definitely know this. I mean, you
Oh, yeah.
talk to a lot of people of
Yeah.
various like reactions to even what you're doing. I'm sure there's people that have grumbled about just like having to interview for their book, and then there's people who will just won't stop bothering you about it. But
Yeah.
um, retailers I found are the same. Like there are some that are just so forward looking that they see what I see, which is that there is something beautiful about having an object, about going to your store. Like every time somebody walks by a comic store, generally people will walk in. It's such a fascinating, fun place, and there's always something fun to buy. And they've diversified enough where like you can look buy a cute toy or like a game, or it's really a
Sure.
lovely place. And that, you can't be there at 2 in the morning when you wanna read the next Superman, like, or they're not everywhere in the world. So, it's again, it's like, it's puzzle, and it's a puzzle that I'm trying to, learn. Like, I'm in a learning state, and then when we get enough people interested, we'll probably announce what it is, what percentage, but the idea is I somewhat have an unlimited inventory, right? Like
Right.
I want people to go to buy like the big, you know, like they might sell out of the big hardcovers and that's it. Ordering 10 more might not be worth their time, not be worth their cost. But they can get a percentage off of like my store because I can be like, here's a single issue that someone could buy. They came to your store, they scanned a QR code. They're now like permanently attached to your store. You potentially get like 30, 20, 25. I'm still figuring that out. Like that's a significant chunk for bringing in a customer. And then we just kind of have a shared customer. Maybe you see they sign up for your newsletter on there. Like I'm really about not building a walled garden because I think Western, specifically digital comics, has stalled because people keep building walled gardens, and
Yep.
you know, whereas like Southeast Asia, 70% of revenue in a very, I mean, different culture for sure, but uh, of comics revenue is digital, and it's not insignificant, and the retailers do really well too. So I don't know. I don't know if that can happen in the West, but I'm sure trying.
I absolutely think it can. I mean, the example that I was coming up with in my head was somebody who got into and is like, "Oh, I came across Jeremy Adams for whatever reason, and, I wanna go back, and now because I was in the shop and it is 2 a.m. and I had finished up this new Aquaman, right?
Yeah.
And now I really wanna go see what else Jeremy did. Oh, it's because it's 2 in the morning and I can't get more. Well, I can go back and I can read all his Green Lantern stuff, and in turn, that gets somebody really hyped just about comics in general. And that's how I see these things kinda working together in a positive way.
I agree wholeheartedly, and some people don't, and some people, Comixology used to do a bunch of stuff with retailers, and then they ripped that cord. They used to have like all these different benefits, and so I can understand the skepticism wholeheartedly on digital comics from just about every single person I talk to. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Yeah, well, I definitely think Amazon really shit the bed for digital and set it back years when we had a fantastic opportunity during COVID, and it was just a synchronicity of bad timing and choices, I think, that just really held us back for a while. So,
yeah, yeah. I think the sale to for Comixology to Amazon was debilitating to
yeah.
digital. I mean, Webtoon's coming in, and um they're they're gathering audiences and stuff like that, and they've been fully digital. And I mean, there was a potentially large business that I think it was short-sighted. So, but that's, my take on that.
Yeah, exactly, and now Webtoons is producing a lot of graphic novel formatting of all kinds of stuff now,
Yeah.
so
And I'm trying to like that's I mean, one key difference between most other stores coming out is I'm trying to build a business that lasts a long, long time. And my goal is to stay in the game. And I have no doubt that, and there is VC money and like, heavily uh, invested businesses with tons of like, third party interests that are maybe focused on growth and not on the community.
sure.
And I just think that's bad. I just think it's bad for consumers, bad for readers. It's just focused on you're focusing on the wrong thing, in my opinion.
Well, with Sweet Shop, it seems like that community element. ho- How are you going to create that? Because the curation element would be huge, in my opinion. For whatever reason, people trust what we say around here at Comic Book Getty as comic sommeliers of a sort, and this has the opportunity to be way more impactful than, say, Goodreads or something similar, just because those things aren't comics driven and comics specific.
Yeah, I think I kind of always said this, and even to a degree, my first stab at this with Omnibus was the start of it. But I do kind of want the synergy. I just said synergy. Excuse me. I just puked a little in my mouth. The sort of mutation of Letterboxd and Steam together. Like those are my two those are two great platforms. Letterboxd has this for those who don't know, Letterboxd is like a film community where they like post their favorite movies, they give reviews and pieces like that, things that comic geeks do. Like um and then Steam has similar functions as a digital game store, but it's
Right.
tied to obviously buying the games, similar to how you would buy digital comics. So I make no secret of that, and that we'll certainly like show off things later that are more functional, more like community driven features than they are like
Okay.
here, go buy this comic or something's on sale. Um, And if you look on, no one's actually mentioned it, but there is an Explore tab that's been very visible on the image on the site itself.
Okay.
So that should give you some idea vaguely. I'm trying to keep it vague because I don't know if
That's
it'll make it
okay.
for launch and like, but the idea is there and it's where I want to go and where the team wants to go. And so I think it'll be pretty good. But I'm very biased.
I mean, that's perfectly fine. We all have to work within our own biases. And I mean, you never know exactly what's going to hit and what's going to work with these kinds of things. I mean, everybody thought, and we've moved in this direction of subscription models for a while, and I can't stand them. I hate them passionately. Sorry, Global. And now that I've kind of gotten rid of them as a sponsorship for our show, are all the sales going to be single item by design?
Ideally, although we will
Okay.
have what Kindle does, which is like the per series subscription, because I do think that's great, but that's still you're paying full price. I mean those models have proven like two things. Like one, it's really bad for the people creating the work. Like you just look
Yeah.
at Netflix, you look at Spotify, the last thing comic creators need is a model that's even worse for them right now.
Yep.
Like, it's very difficult to sell comics. It's very difficult to find an audience. And then the page rates, of course, is a common and I think well, discussed complaint. And it's also bad for publishers. Like the subscription model is bad for publishers. And ultimately, I think places like Global, eventually they're gonna have to hire like they're probably gonna have to because if they do well enough they'll follow the Netflix model and they'll start publishing their own comics and featuring those and it just is like they'll probably start sucking over trying to like get creators over to them and then that messes with publishers and I just think it creates really bad ecosystems. They do sell individual comics though on their site though and like they have stuck around to their credit and it's very hard to do. Like I have a tremendous amount of respect for the work it takes to do this kind of stuff. So I don't want to just like, but I just wholeheartedly disagree with the model as a thing. There is a space, I think, for a back catalog subscription mixed with um sort of day and date purchases because people typically don't buy single issues once the month has passed, right? Like Image
Yeah.
drops their prices on things or even releases the first one free. And then
Which is
then it's the
smart.
the trade waiters, right? That's when the trade waiters come in too. And those are pretty much evergreen. Those will always sell. So I do think there's something interesting there. Publishers are hit and miss on it. And I mean, Sweet Shop is publisher driven, so I go with what they want. And it's just like, if they're like, no, then I'm like, that's fine. That's something I don't have to build, which is great. I can focus on other things. Um, yeah. So I guess
So
what I'm saying is I could see a space for subscription. It would have to be pretty, I mean, it's pretty much a loss leader at most places, from my understanding, to a degree. Sorry, I don't loss leader. I don't know. I don't know the audience well enough, but it's just like just lose money just so people will do other things. Or like if you're VC backed, you're just like growth. Like you essentially
Yep.
you just want them to sign on as quickly as possible, grow those numbers, and then you raise the prices once you're going for like IPO or a sale or something like that. Um, it's pretty standard as your Netflix subscription price shows.
so how do we change, in your opinion, that dynamic where, because I feel like so many publishers now are reaching, do you hear about IP farming constantly and how,
Yeah,
poisonous that is to the medium and creators because there's no legs behind the books. You have a fantastic series and it gets 4 or 5 issues, and that's it. You're done, and it makes a nice compact story in a trade, but wham bam, thank you, ma'am. And they just don't get opportunity to grow in the same way they used to. I mean, the heyday of comics, I guess, that you and I are used to, where you'd have these, indie runs that would last 40 issues or something like that.
yeah.
You know, do you feel like a platform like this can help create an environment of growth and capital from the digital space to sort of change people's mindsets at all? I mean, are you seeing anything to indicate that?
I mean, comics is like all entertainment, it's a hits-based business, and it those sort of experimental longer runs just require more capital, like, just more money.
Right.
So, if the goal is to grow comics, which mine is, then the goal is to increase the amount of money everyone has so that they can take those longer term bets. And that can kind of like go two different ways, right? Like they could, yes, like scale up, like have a series go for 20 issues because they think the creator is really good. Or they could just try out like 7 different creative teams, doing 6-issue arcs, which is kind of what it currently is now. But I don't know if there's um I don't know if which mo like, we did get, like, longer runs, but I wouldn't say, like, they were consistently always good, you know? Like, that's really hard to do.
Yeah,
Um, I think there's some interesting things, like, with Ignition there's some newer publishers pretty committed to that kinda stuff. Ignition, Press, for example, is like, we're gonna make sure that everyone doesn't, like, so that if you order issue 1, there will be an issue 6 in a trade or something like that. Um, we're gonna do like little setups. We're gonna test the market like a lot of people with Kickstarter. I don't I don't know. I just can't control what is the correct path for publishers. I mean,
for
I
sure.
love full completed stories and I hate when creative teams get uh cut off. Uh Image seems to have a pretty decent job of being like, well, it's not selling enough. Please wrap up your story at least. Um which is pretty fascinating. And if I could enable at least that approach more for people to be able to tell their story in certain circumstances by making more money, is digital the future of that? I don't know, because that's like how publishers decide editorially, and that's a magic land that I refuse to enter. I do not want to be a comic publisher. I do not want to. I just want more comics to be made and to make that a livable wage for people in comics and myself.
Well,
Again, like
of
I
course.
want I want to do this business like as long as I can and be as successful as possible for everyone involved. So there's not like I just love comics too, and there's altruism. I mean, not really. It is a business.
Of course yeah, absolutely. You gotta make money, or why would
Mhm.
you invest the time? I mean, it's not like you're in comics journalism.
Yeah. No, yeah, right. Or a comic creator. I mean, it is a very interesting thing. That's why a lot of digital platforms take VC money because that sort of growth to sell to a company
Yeah.
or IPO is I mean, I don't think Comixology did bad when they sold to Amazon. No one knows what the sale price is, but uh yeah, but there's a lot of graveyard. There's a lot of tombstones along the way, which sucks.
But before we have to get shovels out and dig into any of that, let's jump into architecture because that's something that really fascinates me. I'm constantly lamenting in the comics industry being wedded to these outdated marketing modalities because websites are too slow to navigate and social media is too reliant on the holy algorithm. So, creating this ecosystem where both Sweet Shop and Bindings function as two hands, essentially offering a simplified user experience, one from the publisher angle and the other from the creator one. What's your guiding principle with the user experience itself?
Um Guiding principle. We don't really have we sort of have I don't know, learned ethos about it.
Okay.
It's not necessarily like a stated fact. It's just like, this is how we like to build things. Let's find the simplest way for people to do this. Um, like right now is a really good example. Like we just we had an argument about whether we should show this is just the most we're now losing the other half of the audience. show like a sequence number in the ingestion data from ingesting metadata into our system from publishers. And I was for it, and I was convinced by my partners to just drop it, just because, to give you an idea how just down in the mud these discussions get, the sequence that we might have based on what the publisher has sent us would be different than the sequence that of the books that they might like have available. So their sequence number would be different from our sequence number. So it's very much a UI decision to be like, do we surface this? Like, how much information do we surface or make available to um to publishers or when they're filling in this form, or there's different ways we take in metadata depending on the scale of the publisher.
Sure.
And that's another way. Like we just like when it comes to bindings and Sweet Shop, our goal is to automate as much as we can so they have to do as little work as possible.
Of course.
Because that just makes it easy. So like bindings, you just drag and drop a PDF and it'll split it up and it'll make the pages, and you can enter what you want, but you can create a share link and just share it immediately without doing anything. In Sweet Shop, they can drag and drop a spreadsheet and we'll, uh, take the data and we'll chunk it up and we'll put it into something that is usable for our UI. It's really just about a mix of automation and just showing only what you need. And it all comes from the experience of just having screwed up and continuing to screw up so many times in building these things, just so many times. So, um, and I'm sure, you know, we'll already, there's some future things we're screwing up already. So, um, we can always fix it and we can always apologize and do our best to, um, make it easier.
Well, on that front of being easier for creatives, I'm super excited about what bindings could offer the market because as a socially integrative tool for creators who are terribly, terribly notorious, with some exceptions, at being bad at marketing. And
Yeah.
I'm constantly pushing people on the podcast to sell their work, and diversify the way they're going about doing it. Because I will go do the research on somebody for an interview and, hey, what do you have to sell?
Yeah.
So you've described it as the LinkTree, sort of for a reference point for people. So what feels fundamentally additive about bindings that we haven't seen before?
Fancy comic link tree is the term I use. The idea, and I talked about this a little bit with David Harper, which you had referenced earlier.
Yeah.
I call it the Scott Snyder problem. Essentially, Scott Snyder signs up for so many different things that you can't actually understand. You don't know what his full catalog is. Now he could build a website. I mean, Scott Snyder's pretty popular. He could probably build a website that shows you like all his different books. But like he has Comixology digital exclusives, he has Distillery digital exclusives, or Distillery exclusives. Like you can't just go to Amazon and find what Scott Snyder's working on. And then, Sweet Shop as an example. Let's say I get every publisher ever. I'm still not going to probably be able to sell Comixology digital exclusives from Scott Snyder. So
Yeah.
Bindings was really designed to be like, here's where you can find all my books. We just launched a feature like the called Shelves, which allows creators to essentially upload and share their books. They can share small previews and be like, you can buy it here. You can buy it here. Here's the creator. Here's a review. You can just, it's a tool. Um, and so that for me, again, these are all solving my own personal problems. I just wanted to find out what a creator has fully worked on, and be able to read all their work. Because sometimes I'm surprised to find books by some of my favorite creators. Um, and it's rights reasons, usually. It's usually someone holds the rights somewhere, or, they went to DC and then they went to Marvel, and Marvel and DC keep their things separate. And, um, so yeah, and a lot of creators are using it to marketing like final order cutoff. That was another piece that I was noticing as
Yeah.
well. Like you couldn't like that you go to a website where it has like 7 like JPEGs all down in a row, and it's not really an ideal way to read comics. And then there's like no way to see what their other work is or follow up on anything. And creators, I felt, needed to own their audience a little bit more. So you can add like your newsletter to it. You can add all the important dates, like when it's coming out and when you have to call your comic store by. And so it's designed to like take care of all the little things that they can't add everywhere, and like have a central place to be like, here's this book coming out. Aubrey Sitterson, for example, he has Free Planet #1 coming. He has been a huge proponent. He's used bindings constantly, and whenever he talks about it or whenever he references anything, he posts that link. And I hope it's generated a lot of things, but I know that people are going to it. Kieran Gillen for the Power Fantasy, he went he went above and beyond and built like a magazine for it, in specifically in bindings. And that was, it was to show people like what it's about, and he keeps adding to it, which is really interesting as well. Like, you can't get that in print, obviously. um and but it's still like when people go to that link, they see new stuff, and he can keep sharing it, and he can keep seeing where people come from because there are analytics. And it's really just about, comics are hard to display digitally, and what you're working on and selling. It's just a consumer marketing in the comic space is very challenging. It's very challenging. And not a lot of people are trained for it. They're trained for direct market, which you can use bindings for too. Some people create like separate retailer links. It's really fun. It's super cool.
One of the things I noticed was in what you had sent over was people who are actually setting up their signing schedule in there as well. So it seems like there's sort of a calendar function. I don't know, or I don't know how that works exactly, but um,
Yeah, some people have done some interesting, so we actually haven't launched it yet, but we do have like like a schedule function.
yeah,
But some people just use, I mean, it's a tool, it's very malleable. Some people use the different, because we have these things called actions, which are like widgets. And so some people surprise me with how they use them. And then we as uh engineers, like we as like product people, I look at that and I'm like, well, let's figure out a way to like make this more refined and beautiful looking. I love it. I mean, it's very experimental. Like, Sweet Shop feels more straightforward as a digital store. Bindings is very much like, this is something new. I don't know how, if it's gonna work, but it's working. I mean, people are using it in really interesting ways, which I love.
yeah, it seems like a platform that will benefit, especially up and coming creators. Maybe that's just more because I kind of operate more in that space,
Yeah.
than say some of the bigger names. Because say I'm an artist on a smaller press book, and someone just read that, and so I'm looking to see what else they might have done, and here's a very quick and easy way to go back and, "Hey, here's my Kickstarter that I did 2 years ago that I was the artist for, or an anthology that I was working on," and now you can immediately, our example, 2 a.m. in the morning, continue you're creating a binge. It's like a binge reading as opposed to binge watching, essentially, a market for
Yeah,
that.
and I think it's important that like the bindings is very much like a marketing tool of previews generally for the public. Although, because like some people confuse Sweet Shop and bindings, they're like, can people read, like, generally you probably won't be able to read full comics on bindings.
Yeah.
Some creators will create private password protected things for like previewing to press. That's the only way I've seen it used in that regard. But it is a way to be like, oh, here's this person's work, and I can also, they sell it on Gumroad, this particular book, even though you can get this one on Amazon. Like that, it's trying to like make straight lines to things versus following a web of things.
Right. It sounds like you have a user base who started out and is very enthusiastic about fiddling with things and adjusting things. I'm just curious, how do we convince comic folks essentially that they need to get and click that switch, that they need to operate like Brooklinen, in terms of constantly hitting people with marketing and marketing when creatives just simply aren't good at that. So what tools are kind of in place to help them? Are you gonna have video tutorials or, you know
Yeah, so I think there is like an education component eventually to all of this beyond just like here's how the platform works, here's how you not here's how the tool works, here's how bindings works. I think um direct I mean plus the videos are hard because it's always changing, right?
Yeah.
Um the single greatest piece of advice I got was if you're on algorithm driven networks, and this is from comic book couples counseling. They said that the best thing you can do is post the link in like a thread. Like don't post the link first. Um, and so second to that, I think there is some just like, yes, it's really hard to post content every day and it feels weird. It feels unnatural unless you're in that space where you've just trained yourself to like understand that even though uh you feel like your audience is probably seen the same thing 3 billion times and it's exhausting.
Hmm.
The truth is that one day the algorithm may favor that because someone likes it who is in this particular place. And, you know, it I think people are just used to scrolling. I don't think it's as big of a like, well, I'm gonna unfollow you. And there's a question now about whether even following in terms of just like social network marketing is even important versus views because of the way the algorithms work. Um, I I will provide as much guidance as I can, and I intend to recruit some of my friends from tech who have done digital marketing to help write pieces for comics folks to understand this. But that is all dreamy, like future surfing stuff. While I'm,
Sure.
as you said, being a masochist and taking on these 3 things with my partners. So, we don't wanna add more pieces of software to this, but we do, wanna keep adding features. So, it's a balance and it'll sort of I don't know. I mean, I definitely think a lot about automating really crappy things, like just even posting as a part of bindings. Like, here's my book. Post it every morning at 8 o'clock with these tags,
Yeah.
silly things like that. But like you can post it on every network, I don't have a good answer for you. It's still like too it's changes too much and I don't quite have as much knowledge as the people I would reach out to grow that.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
Is there an e-commerce element that you're incorporating into it? Say I had original pages and I didn't want to deal with Felix comic art or something like that, or I'm not big enough to be one of their artists, but I really want to sell it, but I don't want to create a website to do so.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think what I would rather do is build the thing that works with Shopify.
gotcha.
So like you add the Shopify widget for your shop.
Okay,
Like I in that way, it's very much like Linktree in that it's like, here's how I connect like to this other service. And we pull that data. Like we're launching Patreon this month and they have a full API integration. So I can like bindings can talk to it and present their tiers and their subscription number, like in their image and their description. And then you can just click a button and you'll be in the checkout if you're signed into Patreon. Like that's the kind of integration, but I'm not building Patreon and I'm not building checkout. I I've spoken with some friends who do art sites and just been like, well, what would this be like if they wanted to pull in this and then we could just link to your site in that regard. So I think I think I wanted to be more a citizen of the different pieces of the web as sort of a like centralized location for all the things you have to do because I can't offer the amount of features or flexibility of like a Shopify or
yeah,
even like Gumtree or Kofi or Patreon. Like I don't want to build those either.
yeah.
Um, so my goal is to take feedback, build things that connect to things.
So what's the rollout schedule for everything as you understand it for 2025?
Oh God. Uh, uh, they the next piece we're working on is sort of this sort of patronage component for bindings. We're very heavily in shop right now, uh, building all the pieces, building the UI, building the apps. Um, so that patronage, which is like Kickstarter, Patreon, and Ko-fi support for bindings, will launch this month. And then the next month we'll probably do a little bit more store and publisher reveals. We'll probably reveal some publishers at the end of this month too. We've got quite a bit signed at this point.
Nice.
Yeah. And then we'll kind of probably go dark for San Diego while everyone else announces like 7,000 things. And then the next thing will be the store launch, which will be
Okay.
pretty big, obviously. And that'll be on devices, not on web yet. And then I don't like, I know what's on our roadmap at that point, but it'll be really interesting to see what we do actually do next. I mean, there's things we want to do with bindings. Like we want to add more the ability to even, we'll probably keep doing stuff for bindings while we update the store. Find your comic store. I want to build a bridge between bindings and retailers. So that's kind of where that is. I want people to be able to order comics through other systems. Not building the e-commerce system, but like being able to order directly from the direct market is a huge goal of bindings. So there's pieces there, nothing I
Okay.
can commit to. Things I
Sure.
can talk very vaguely and unhelpfully about.
Okay. So you're talking over at the Third Eye folks and creating a deal for people, where they can buy their signed first issue of Martian Manhunter or whoever else they have signing this week.
Um,
Maybe.
I think of it more like, let's say the Power Fantasy #9 is coming out, and like Kieran Gillen wants to put like a buy from your local store, and then they can find their store and they can sort of pre-order it there.
I gotcha.
That would be my ideal. That's a
Okay.
lot of logistical stuff, and I've been working on it for a while, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it is gonna happen, but it's looking okay at this point. And every store uses different point of sale systems, and like I said, I don't want to build those things, so it's a
Who would
whole
want to get into that? There's
yeah,
so
yeah.
many of
So
them.
so it's like building support for that is going to be the challenge, and so that might be the next big thing to tackle after we launch the shop. And then of course the shop will be huge, so that's our centerpiece.
Well,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I highly recommend folks check all this stuff out. As I said before, I'm the reluctant tech guy, but I think that's why Sweet Shop and Bindings will work because it takes a lot of the tech out of putting together a sales platform for creators with respect to bindings and just the ease of being able to find what you're looking for with Sweet Shop. So I think they're great. I'll put all the appropriate links in the show notes to make everything easy for people to find. What's the easiest way to stay up to date with when you're going to release stuff and what you guys got going on?
Sweet.dev is the website. You can find all our socials there. That's probably the easiest to say, at least, of all the things. So I would go there and subscribe to any of those things. We're posting with some frequency, and we'll be announcing publishers for our new Sweet Shop pretty soon here. Pretty exciting.
Yay, that's super cool. Well,
Yeah.
as is now tradition, as we get to the end of the show, we do a shout out. So this can be someone who recently did you a solid or just something that inspired you or that you're grateful for. So what do you got?
Uh, I mean, I'm always really grateful to the Matt and Ben who work with me. They're just phenomenally good partners and just so necessary for uh, leveling an egomaniac like myself as best as they could. And I appreciate them immensely, and I could not do it without them. So I will always give them the first shout out I can. Like, this is a team effort. And while I am the big dumb face, I appreciate them very much. So shout out to them, Matt Anderson and Ben Carr.
That's amazing. You don't seem like an egomaniac at all.
It's very well hidden, but it's there. You don't start businesses and call yourself CEO without being an egomaniac. Come on. Come on.
I don't know. You're
Come
too much of
on.
a you're too much of a comics nerd. Comics nerds.
Oh, yeah,
Well, okay.
comics isn't full of egomaniacs? Are you sure you
Okay.
wanna say that?
I'm
Are you
I'm
sure?
I'm I'm pulling back. I'm pulling back. I'm pulling back. Okay.
It's full
Well,
of characters, and I love it.
yeah. Yeah. Well, all industries ultimately are small. I learned that being in the music business, and it's all about relationships
It
and
really is.
cultivating those and being kind and nice and
Yeah,
thoughtful, because you never know who will end
never.
up somewhere that could be very detrimental if you've been mean to somebody. So,
Yeah, the number one piece of advice I would give anyone entering comics is to just go start meeting people, and people are kind. You can email them and they will meet with you if you have, you know, something. It doesn't have to be of interest, but if you like, people will talk. That's what's lovely about it. So the every industry is small is a really good take. I really like that.
yeah. Well, Kenny, thanks for coming on the show today. It's been positive enlightenment from my end, from the tech end of things. I mean, I feel like this has been a bam, 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 firing questions off, but there's so many things that I think about the platform that are great opportunities for people. So I think it's just really been an engaging conversation. I really appreciate it. Gives me
Oh
hope.
man, I'm such a fan. So thank you for having me. And yeah, anyone can send feedback about anything. It's Kenny@sweet.dev. Like it's very open. You see my face. I'm happy to talk with you about the platforms anytime. And I hope they are useful and fun for comic folk. That's my goal.
Well, we appreciate you. This is Byron O'Neill. You've been listening to the Cryptic Creator Corner, and on behalf of all of us at Comic Book Yeti, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.